Hi everybody, welcome to Monday. This video is by request of a sort. There have been a lot of people asking me to do follow-ups to cover certain stories, and I was like, they don't really fit on my channel, not really. But I found a way to sort of make it work and do what I think people are looking for with these requests. So if you like this sort of content, because this kind of stuff may get demonetized, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Now, quite a few people have asked me to revisit the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation. I've been continuing to follow it. Up until his guitar performance online over the weekend, where he was like, basically, thanks for your support. Thanks for staying with me on this long road sort of thing. But until there is a movement in court or some sort of another recording of some kind or something like that, comments from friends, as compelling as they may be, just don't hit the level of evidence for me to really talk about anything new. The thing about this channel is that this channel, I stick to facts, and I come up with theories based on facts. And so there have been no new facts that have changed my mind on the situation. Now, other people asked me to speak about the Joe Biden, Tara Reid situation. I have been absolutely unable to figure out how to link that into a gaming channel. I just, other than the face full of makeup I have on right now from boss fight shooting over the weekend, that's not enough of a connection, right? So I was really struggling with that one because I know it's of interest, but there's definitely more of a pop culture weigh-in with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. The Joe Biden thing is straight up politics. I do podcasting for that kind of stuff. If you are interested in my views on that stuff, that's what the FU Network podcasts are for. Hey Ladies, Broken Clock, and the other ones I do as sort of a panelist. This is for gaming. But while I was shooting Boss Fight, shooting Princess Sparkle Muffin stuff, oddly enough, it kind of clicked with me of what people might be looking for here. And the core of the fascination and sometimes the obsession with these, accusation-based stories is, it seems to me, people being very invested for understandable reasons in who gets listened to and who gets heard and who is perceived not to have a right to tell their side, not to be given presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And that makes a lot of sense, and diving deeper into that train of thought, you get a lot of people who either suffered abuse or people who were accused of abuse, and in the latter didn't do it and got railroaded, or it was at least exaggerated from what it is. And I'm on the bizarre situation of having experienced both sides. I know how crappy it is when someone has power over you and they can make you miserable, and you can't do anything about it. I also know what it's like to be accused of abuse. In my case, I was accused of basically being I was protecting abusers, because people go a very long way sometimes with allegations that are not real. And in my case, the reason I knew the allegation wasn't real is because I was a witness to some of it, caught the person in multiple lies, and caught the person accusing multiple people of the same trumped up assault. So, I'm in a position where I know it can happen. It's very, very rare. It's very rare that people make stuff up. But it does happen. And a lot of times, unfortunately, when women are abusive, they use the goodwill that people have in this benevolently sexist way towards women. And so they'll just believe the woman whole cloth. They won't question because women aren't treated like complete people capable of lying, capable of, misidentifying. Now, in the case, in the case of these instances, it's not a question of, oh no, they got the wrong person. That was, I know, something that came up during the Kavanaugh hearings, that it might have happened, but it might not have been him. Who knows, right? In these cases, in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, they were married, right? It was either they did it or they didn't. Both sides. The problem is that these things tend to be hard to prove because it's stuff that happens when two people are alone. People tend to hide it at the time because they're embarrassed. Now, people hide it to greater or lesser degrees of success, but the shame inherent of being abused by someone is such that people cover it up. They need time to sort of process it and figure out a lot of the times that's what's happening is actually abusive. I know quite a few of you have told me about that. You're still working through your stuff that happened in childhood, sometimes done by a parent. So this stuff is fresh. This stuff is raw. This stuff is personal, right? And I want you to know that that's part of the reason I'm being really super careful about what I cover in this regard. I don't want it to be salacious. And I don't want to become she only covers things when she thinks some guy's been falsely accused. No, I cover things when I think things have been, when I think there is something to say, if that makes any sense. If it's a sort of a he said, she said with no real firm evidence one way or the other, there's not much to say, is there? If there's something that deserves to be pointed out, then it gets pointed out. I'm less concerned, though, with these celebrities, warring through divorces or yet another accusation against a political candidate that is super frustrating because it may or may not have happened so long ago, and there's really no way to prove beyond reasonable doubt, or even really with preponderance of evidence. The Tara Reid Biden thing is just such a mess at this point. People are pretty much going to believe what they want to believe, and it's going to be very hard to change anybody's mind because there's no hard evidence of any kind, really. So that's going to be what it's going to be, and everybody's going to make their final decision when it comes to voting in November, because really that's what that whole thing is all about, right? I say this very clearly, I'm not American. I don't get a vote. That's not a decision I have to make. What I do care very much about is the people watching this content who have been wronged in the past and trying in some way to facilitate healing in that regard, because that is real and that is something that I can help with. The truth is that no matter how many of these salacious, gossip stories you follow, it's never going to change what happened to you. And so it's this idea of how does somebody get past something where, and I think there are a lot of people who watch this channel who are male, who suffered abuse, and they tried to tell someone and they weren't believed, which is why there's such a visceral reaction to this whole believe women thing. Why can't it just be believe people? And I agree with you. It should be believe people. I think it's extra hard for men because we're not as far along in terms of understanding how men are abused and victimized. But that's that double-edged sword of sexism that cuts both ways, right? Like, yes, men can be seen as leaders, but because men are seen as leaders, there's certain things that they aren't allowed to have experienced because, oh, that's something that happens to women, and oh no, women can't be leaders. How silly. I'm not saying this is your opinion. I'm saying this is the societal opinion that causes these issues. But it does happen, right? And a lot of people walk around feeling deeply ashamed by it. Some people are so deeply ashamed that they have buried it so deep that either they're not willing to accept that what happened to them is abuse, and so it torments them their entire life because they can't name it. If you can't name it, you can't process it. If you can't process it, you never heal from it. And I think there's a lot of people walking around that way. Unfortunately, we're just starting to understand how to deal with these things. It was shoved in the proverbial closet for so long that we still kind of suck at it. And so what do people do? And it's difficult because one of the things successful abuse does is it makes you your own worst enemy, right? The guilt and shame of what happened go on far longer beyond the physical injuries, beyond, that kind of stuff. It's you feel weak, you feel wronged, and you feel helpless. And it's that sense of helplessness that I think causes people to just get way too invested in these stories of famous and powerful people. But the truth is, what happened to these famous and powerful people doesn't change what happened to you. Whether another person is guilty or innocent doesn't mean that what happened to you didn't happen, And the reality is that most of these situations, the vast majority of abusive situations, never end up in court. There's never a jury. It's just something you have to square within your own head. And that's a tough process when people do believe you. It's very difficult when people don't. Trust me, I know what it's like. But it is possible. You can, affirm that it happened. You can do things to close the door, to close the book on that. You can examine what happened and how you can do things to feel like you're taking your power back. And this is when the messaging gets into, oh, what do you mean? Are you saying they deserved it? Are you saying they're at fault? No. Learning from a traumatic event does not mean you're to blame for the traumatic event. It does not mean that you caused it or you had it coming. Quite the opposite. A lot of the time when these things happen, it's because an abusive person takes advantage of a person's good nature. And so, people are, oh, you're victim blaming. Well, no, because it's your life. It's my life. And I could go, oh, changing the way I do things so I don't attract as many toxic people. One could say that's victim blaming. You know what? I consider that self-improvement. And that helps a lot. If you can look back and go, you know what? This thing's not controlling me the way it did. I'm getting things done. I'm getting projects done. I'm achieving things. And those achievements don't necessarily have anything to do with what happened. It's just your life doesn't end. And then we get into this thing of, well, someone got away with it. I don't think, and this is just my worldview, it helps me get through things. Just because somebody doesn't end up in jail, or just because somebody isn't publicly shamed, doesn't mean they got away with it. In a lot of cases, the people who need to know. The people who, the people who were there, they know what they did. They know they know the pain they caused. And yes, some people are just, psychopaths and they don't care. But most people do care. They care very much, and they have to live with that. And for many people, that's not enough justice. For many people, they need to see someone pay. Here's the secret about that. The need to have someone pay for what was done to them tends to be what drives abusive people. The way you break the cycle of abuse is by finding a victory without revenge. Revenge never feels as good as you think it's going to. Revenge just perpetuates the unpleasantness. And it's like, well, if I don't regain my power, like if I don't show this person who's boss, then how do I win? How do I not let them beat me? And I mean, we can look to video games for this, because that's, that kind of thinking is very narrow-minded, right? That kind of thinking is there's only one way to win. There's only one type of game. There's only one type of story. There's only one way to win a game. Now, anybody who's played as many games as I do knows that in Dishonored, you can play, just go kill everybody. You can play in sort of a pacifist run and kill very few people and still win the game, right? If you play something like Civilization or, one of those strategy games, there are multiple victory conditions, and not all of them are just dominating your opponent on the battlefield. I always like the technology or the culture victories in those games. I don't know why. They're more interesting to me, because the battle gets tedious after a while to me. But even in the big epic RPGs and stuff like that, there are multiple endings. And those multiple endings wouldn't be meaningful if there was only one way to beat the game, right? There are many, many ways to beat the game. And I've had some interesting conversations with people at the ending of Far Cry 4, the whole Pagan Min thing. And that's an ending where people feel very, very strongly about the choice they made. And people that sort that into good ending or bad ending are missing the nuance of those games and missing the nuance of the Far Cry games in general. To me, the Far Cry games are all about the protagonist, the playable character, remembering who they are throughout the game. Everybody forgets who they were in game when they started that game. Far Cry 3, Far Cry 4, Far Cry 5, that was my experience in every single game. To an extent that, failed state, blood and guts, but the freedom of it all does overtake you to an extent. And at the end, do you remember why you went in there for the first place? Does it even matter? And the brilliance of that game is there are no wrong answers regarding that. None. If you decide to become as big a son of a bitch as the bad guy of that game, in Far Cry 3, not so much, but in Far Cry 4 and Far Cry 5, valid choice, right? If you decide to walk away and not become that, also a choice the game can process. And video games are taking us away from good ending, bad ending in that way, in a way I think is very healing for people. Because it's not a question of good ending, bad ending. It's the ending that felt the most right to you. In the Mass Effect games, for instance, I think Mass Effect 2, The ending where everyone survived did not feel as right to me as the playthroughs I played through where a couple people died. There are a few people you lost. That felt more like a real story to me than, yay, saved everybody. I found that some deaths were more poignant than if they lived. That is not the ideal ending in some people's minds, but I think we need to wipe out this idea of good ending, bad ending. These endings are what we make of them. These endings are what we bring to the table. And these endings, if it's a well-made game, make sense based on the journey you took to that point. And that's the secret sauce that I'm trying to convey in this, is that your life is your game. Your outcomes are going to be about the choices you made to that point. And whether it's a good ending or a bad ending all depends on whether you are making choices that are true to you, what the motivations behind those choices were, and if you did the best you could in a given circumstance. Not perfection, the best you could. You know if you gave it your all. You know if you did the right thing, if you were kind or you were cruel. You know. And the great thing about doing the right thing, whether it gets rewarded or not, is you did the right thing. And so if you do the wrong thing in future, well, you have a track record of doing the right thing. Good people are going to be more forgiving of that. If you did the wrong thing, you constantly have to be running ahead of doing the wrong thing. And then you do another wrong thing and another wrong thing and another wrong thing, trying to cover up that first bad thing you did because you know it's bad. And you'd be amazed at how many people are in that second scenario. You know how you can tell right now? Look at the number of people who are freaking out because they're just being told to sit at home, especially here in Canada. Stay home. The government will give you money to cover like your base expenses. Don't worry about it. Just we got this. People are still climbing the walls because they can't stop. And those people, to me, are running from something. And it's nothing external. It's internal. If you can't sit and be alone with your own thoughts, that's the bad ending. So that's your goal. Not to get revenge, not to right the wrong that was done in the past, because you can't turn back time. There's no way to change what happened. There's no save game, right? Life's a roguelike. You can move on and rebuild and put that in your rearview mirror. And when you consider that abuse is about power, the best thing you can do, the way you beat that boss, is to shake off the power they have over you. And oftentimes that's not a direct fight. You can't. They're using the fact that they're more powerful for you in some way. And that can be just in the assumptions that others make about the situation. It can be that simple. But, if you find a way to break that power game, to stop them from having ongoing influence over your life, that's a victory condition. How that's done is really dependent on the circumstances of the situation. Sometimes it's just finding a family of choice instead of a family of origin. Sometimes that's what does it. Other times it's being able to accomplish a project you always wanted to do. Other times it's a journey to figure out how to love and be compassionate towards yourself when somebody took that away from you. Often it's a combination of all of these things. And so hopefully people out there who are living with pain, Monday is when I usually do these things. So we used to do Mountain Monday all the time, but they were fairly low rated videos because search, right? But I hope that helps some people. I hope that helps some people feel like somebody hears them and someone at least would be open to believing their story. Because that's what I think all of these stories of these abuse sagas end up being. It's people getting very invested by proxy because of what happened to them and what they see as similarities. So if it helps, I'm aware there's a lot of people walking around with a lot of trauma, and that's real. And no one can take that from you. That will always be a part of you. And people who care about you, one of the things I have to accept is you can change the way you think and feel about your past experiences. You'll never be able to change that they happened. They make you who you are, and that's a good thing. There's a reason the language shifted from victim to survivor, and now that's sort of become a mockery, right? But it's true. You're not a victim of something, you're a survivor of something. You went on to tell your story. There's more to it, right? So hopefully that helps. I'm interested in hearing whether this rings true to you. I'm not sure what else I'm going to do for the reasons I stated, but hopefully this helps. Take some deep breaths. We'll do it. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out. Okay, go play video games, but first, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.